friends, it's the Stitches, and today I have a list of places that you can donate your decluttered possessions to that aren't Goodwill. I've been very guilty of giving a little bit too much support to Goodwill. I'm sure everybody else has been as well, because let's face it, a lot of places, Goodwill's the only thrift store or Salvation Army is the only thrift store, and both of them have very not the best ethics. I guess there have been cases of workers dying or getting injured in unsafe work conditions in Goodwill warehouses, and that's not like a pleasant thing to think about, especially considering thrifting should be something that's good for people and good for the environment and good for sustainability and ethics, but apparently even our thrift stores are betraying us. So if you have recently decluttered your possessions or you're in the process of doing that, I know KonMari's popularity is not waning anytime soon. Right now there are a lot of people that have boxes and boxes of things that they've decided that they don't want anymore, and then are not sure where to actually take those things that isn't the dump or Goodwill. So this is not a complete list, but these are kind of all the things I could think of off the top of my head for places to take anything that you might have sitting around your house that you don't want anymore. And they're in no order necessarily. None of these are more important than any others. It just kind of depends on your situation and what you have available to you. So number one are consignment stores. These are places that are like thrift stores, but they're a little bit more pricey. Plato's Closet is a good example. Buffalo Exchange is a good example. There are a lot of small independent ones as well. We have one here that's called Lady Godiva's that's like just a standalone shop, I'm pretty sure. But most places will have at least one. And this is kind of the best place to take your higher end clothing, your name brand clothing, your really high quality clothing, things that you know will retain a lot of value, but you may not have the effort to actually list each individual piece and sell it on eBay or Depop or Poshmark or wherever you sell things. Because of this, they are obviously more likely to accept name brand pieces, but it's not unheard of for them to accept handmade pieces either. The most important thing to keep in mind about consignment shops is that you can't just take your clothes into it and expect to be able to sell them. Normally you have to make an appointment, and sometimes the appointments are several months out in advance, so it's best to make that appointment as soon as you know that you have clothes that you want to consign. This should be done probably when you're in the beginning steps. You get that appointment set so that by the time you're done decluttering, you have everything and you don't have to wait a ton of time. Next up on my list is the Habitat for Humanity stores. If you have a local branch of Habitat for Humanity in your area, then they probably have a physical store that you can donate things to. If you have any paint or shelving or loose wood or old chairs or dining tables, that sort of thing, bigger home goods or home renovation items are likely to be accepted at a Habitat for Humanity store. So basically at a Habitat for Humanity store, they take in donations of used home renovation and home good items, and then it's kind of like a Goodwill, but for that specifically, that people can buy pieces for a new home if they can't otherwise afford it. A lot of times if it's like loose wood or paint or something like that, then it might actually get used to make a Habitat for Humanity home, but sometimes local branches just have the local store as opposed to an actual home build operation. And then any of the proceeds from those stores will obviously go to buying new lumber, sheetrock, etc. for new houses. Another good place to consider is the YWCA or other women's crisis centers. Many of the women who seek shelter at a women's crisis center often wind up there on very short notice, and they often don't have time to get any of their possessions to take with them because they're usually fleeing unsafe conditions in their home. So this is an especially good place to take your business interview clothes, unopened makeup packages. Also things like unused diapers and baby clothing are often in need there as well. And any unused feminine hygiene products that you might have lying around as well. A lot of people are switching to the Diva Cup or things like that. There are also reusable pads. A lot of people are just bringing back the sponge as well. So if you have unused tampons, unused pads, anything like that, this would be a great place to take that. And you know that your items will go to a local woman in need. So next on my list are locally owned thrift stores, and I don't want to take a ton of time to explain them because they're basically just like a Goodwill, but they're locally owned. I recommend looking for places that will donate at least part of their proceeds to a local food bank or a local homeless shelter, because a very large portion of locally owned thrift stores will do that. Next up are the Humane Society shelters. This is a very good place to take old baby blankets and towels, things like that that you're not using, old linens especially, because they're constantly in need of new ones, and it doesn't matter how ratty they are. They could have holes in them, they could be kind of falling apart on the edges. That's fine, they still need that stuff. So basically, the only thing that can be reused when you're handling animals for adoption or animals that might be sick, things that can be sanitized 100%. And fabric cannot be sanitized 100%. So if you have an animal that you suspect might have fleas and you have, you know, a crate lining of an old towel, you have to throw that towel away after that animal moves out of that crate, because you can't risk spreading any type of anything in between those animals. Because unfortunately, a lot of animals that get surrendered to the Humane Society are very, very sick, and sometimes they are contagious. So nobody wants to spread an upper respiratory infection to newborn kittens, you know, they don't want anything like that touching or contaminating each other, so they're constantly in need of new blankets, new towels, new linens, anything that they can cut up and use to line an animal crate. If you have an animal that's outgrown its food or has moved on to a different food, like say if you have old cans of kitten food lying around and your cat is like 5, then that's a good place to take that as well. Also, old litter that you're not using can find a new home in an animal shelter. Along the same line are homeless shelters and food banks. The reason I haven't mentioned them sooner is because they often aren't taking things that you would expect them to be taking. In recent years, they've become a bit more picky about the things that they'll take because they're kind of sick of getting 5-year-old expired cans of pumpkin. So call ahead and see what they might be in need of. And then if you have any of those items, then look for them while you're decluttering. Another place that a lot of people don't think of are local schools, especially if you live in an area where finances aren't great, funding isn't great. You'd be surprised at what your local schools might be in need of. Old photography equipment, art supplies, things like that are always in high demand because arts funding gets cut every single year, it seems like. So art programs in schools are definitely sorely in need of materials so that young aspiring artists can learn their craft. Another place is libraries. Local libraries are always in need of new books. They often don't have funding to buy new books, so they have to rely on donations. And they'll take pretty much anything that's in any condition, as long as it's not like, you know, hardcore porn. But anything else really should be accepted. Another thing that gets looked over a lot are fire stations. So a thing that fire stations do regularly that a lot of people don't think about unless they've been in this position are giving toys to children who have had their houses burned down. They usually look specifically for plush animals, but they'll take anything. They'll take your old Legos and bag them up and give them to a kid. Unfortunately, when a house burns down, you don't get to save your kid's favorite stuffed animal. You don't get to save any of their toys that they might have major attachments to. And you know, what is more comforting to a kid who's just lost everything than your old plush animal? So definitely, if you have a bunch of old toys from your childhood that you know you're not gonna ever play with again because you're like 25, think of donating them to a local fire station for those children. We're getting down to the end of our list here. Next, I have phone recycling centers and pawn shops for your old technology. I know that they're in my local Walmart. I don't know of any other places though, but some places will have these little, like, they look like vending machines, but they're places that you can return old cell phones for a little bit of cash. I don't know how much money you get, but it recycles the phone essentially so that the parts from the old phone can be remade and made into new technology. And then also a pawn shop will also take any old technology, but they'll take not just phones, they'll take old cameras, they'll take jewelry, they'll take instruments, they'll take sports equipment, any of the larger items that had value at one point but don't really have a lot of value anymore. Somebody might be looking for that. And lastly, I have the Facebook Marketplace and yard saling. A lot of people tend to gravitate towards this idea first, but I kind of wanted to put it on the end of the list just purposefully in case you just have a few other things left over that you can't really figure out how to rehome. You can list these on the Facebook Marketplace if you have the energy to do that, or you can just put them all in a yard sale for a couple weekends. You can also use the Facebook Marketplace to advertise a yard sale. But yeah, you would be amazed at the things that people buy at yard sales. Anytime I've ever put up a yard sale, the actual things that sell are not the things that I expected to sell. So you never know, you might be able to rehome a few things that way, but it's definitely lower down on the list. There are lots of other places to take your belongings. I'm sure there are plenty that I've forgotten that people will put down in the comments. I really wanted this list to focus on local actions though, so that your belongings can stay in your community and help other people within your community, which I find is something that a lot of people are looking for right at the moment. So hopefully this has been helpful. I hope everybody has a good day, and I will see you all next time. Bye!